Hi class, this video will talk about policy questions. The first is, which is better to stimulate the economy, monetary policy or fiscal policy? Now, the traditional Keynesian views money demand is highly sensitive or elastic to changes in the interest rates. So if money demand is highly elastic, then our LM and money market will look something like this. So money supply is relatively normal. The IS curve is sloped down normally, but we will see a elastic money demand curve. So that means it'll be almost perfectly horizontal, and this in turn will create an elastic LM curve. So right now we have an equilibrium at R1 and Y1, and the equilibrium comes over here to R1 and P over, or M over P. Okay. So what we see is if we use changes in the money supply or monetary policy, and we have a large increase in the money supply to M over P2, then we will see a relatively small change in the real interest rates. And this will lead to a very small change in the LM curve. So when we see a large change in the money supply, we're not going to have a very large output or outcome in decreasing the interest rates. And thus the economy won't be very stimulated by the monetary policy. So this is what we call a liquidity trap. A liquidity trap is if money demand is perfectly elastic or relatively highly elastic, the LM curve becomes almost perfectly flat or perfectly flat, depending on the elasticity. So in this example, it's not perfectly flat or perfectly elastic, but it could be. So if money demand is perfectly elastic, the LM curve becomes perfectly flat. Monetary policy will not work in this case when the money demand curve is perfectly elastic. The only way to change the economy in this example is to use fiscal policy, because fiscal policy takes into account the IS curve. So this IS curve will shift forward or backward depending on what the economy needs in the interest rates. And this will help stimulate or contract the economy. So what we need through fiscal policy is, remember, fiscal is the government spending. So in the Keynesian view, fiscal policy is better due to the fact that there is a liquidity trap in this economy. Now, what happens if it is the opposite way? So let's just get rid of this. All right, still learning how to use this contraption. All right, so what happens if we have money demand being highly inelastic? So our graphs will then look like this. When our money demand is highly inelastic, our LM hold on. Our LM curve will also be tilted the wrong way. There we go. our LM curve will also be highly inelastic. So what we'll see is when there's even a small shift in the money demand, we're going to see a very large shift in the LM curve. Thus, a small shift in the money demand will cause a large change in the real interest rates. And this can be a problem because if people are having loans taken out at this lower interest rate without knowing our money demand curve is highly inelastic, as soon as there's an increase, even a small increase in the money demand, there's going to be a huge bump up in real interest rates, which could cause banks to lend too much and then have a bubble burst. So this is similar to what happened in 2008, and it also happened in Japan. It's called Japan's Lost Years, which I'll post a link to in our eCampus. Okay, our final example will include stuff about 2001. So a lot of different things happened in 2001. First, we had a recession, and then there was also 9/11, which caused a huge decrease in consumer confidence. Then there was also a decrease in investment post the 1990 tech boom. It should be boom. Post the 1990 tech boom, and then the stock market fell. So a lot of different things happened in 2001. So let's look at this via ISLM. So I'm just going to erase this real quick, and we could take a look at it. So let's draw it out. We have our IS1 and our LM1, and we're going to split this up into two parts. First, the shock that occurs, and second, what the economy does to recover between fiscal and monetary policy. Okay, so the first thing, we see a decrease in investment, a decrease in consumer confidence, a wealth decrease during this time, and also a decrease in consumption. So we're going to put it E equals C plus I plus G. We see a decrease in investment, a decrease in consumption, a decrease in consumer confidence and wealth, and thus a large decrease in the expenditure. So we're going to see an IS curve shift far left. So it's going to shift pretty far back to IS2. And now to respond to this, since we have a decrease in the output, we're going to be looking at what happens to the LM curve for these different responses. So first, what we're going to do is there's going to be an increase in the money supply. So M increases. This is a response to the IS shock moving backwards. So we're going to increase M, which will end up shifting the LM curve to the right. LM2. The other things that happen during this policy response is that there's tax decrease, and these are called the Bush tax cuts. This will impact the IS curve. Another thing that happens is there's going to be government spending due to the war in Iraq. So a bunch of these things happen, and what we're going to see is that the IS curve will start to bounce back just a little bit to get the economy on track. This is due to the fact that when we decrease taxes, we're going to increase consumption, and we're also going to increase government spending. Although it may not be for the best cause, the increase in government spending and the increase in consumption did pull our economy back just a little bit. So now our equilibrium real interest rates aren't so far down here, but it was just a small dip. Okay. So generally, taxes along with changes in the money supply can help the economy throughout a recession. And we do these policy changes to lessen the business cycle fluctuations. So remember when we talked about in class how we wanted to get this business cycle as smooth as possible so there wasn't crazy fluctuations? Well, that's what happened in 2001. The Bush tax cuts, along with the increased government spending, flattened out our business cycle curve to mitigate against these recessionary times. Okay, if anyone has any questions about this, please shoot me an email. And remember, we will have office hours tonight and also on Tuesdays. Okay, have a great night, guys.